أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصلي عليه. Friends, assalamu alaikum. This is going to be a second part to the previous video regarding some of the perversions of Javed Ghamidi, whom I consider to be an extremely misguided and dangerous individual, one of the callers from the gates of hell, one of the callers who is in front of a gate leading to Jahannam. As the Most Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he warned us about that there would be callers at the gates of Jahannam, the gates of hell, calling the Muslims to a particular deviation or evil by which they would enter to the gate of hell. Because, as they say, the road to salvation is straight and narrow, but the roads leading to hell, they are many and they are broad and they are very easy to find and to embark upon. Therefore, Muslims have to be extra cautious about some of these pseudo-religious leaders and figures. Among them is Ghamidi. And in the previous video, I gave some background on Ghamidi, that what is the particular strain or understanding of Islam that he hails from the modernist and the so-called political Islamist tendency. That's where his roots are. That's where his roots are, and that is where he originates from. And this is why, and these type of individuals, they have nothing to contribute in terms of spirituality. Their approach to Islam is extremely dry. They reject spirituality. They reject mysticism. They reject tasawwuf. In fact, they have a lot of contempt for it. They have a lot of contempt for tasawwuf, and they are a materialist mindset. And along with being modernists, they are materialists. They are heavily influenced by materialist Western philosophies like communism and Marxism, Leninism, socialism. They want democracy. They want to have a Western cultural liberalism. And they are very far removed from Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, from Orthodox and traditional Sunni Islam. Now, Ghamidi is an individual who basically his approach to Islam is in the context of Pakistan. And Pakistan is a country which is sort of set apart from the rest of the Muslim world, in that it is a country where there's a lot of independence for the ulama and for Islamic organizations and movements and tendencies. There's a lot of independence, unlike in Arab, for example, or in Central Asia, where Islam is controlled by the state. The Islamic institutions are controlled by the state. The state pays the religious functionaries, the Aimma, the Khutaba, and so on and so forth, the preachers. They're appointed by the state, and there's very little room for people to have a sort of independent approach to Islam, that it does not have government oversight. To the extent where in some of those Arab countries and some of those Central Asian countries, the khutbah that the Imam reads on Friday has to be approved by the government, if not outright dictated by the government. Now, Ghamidi, he believes that Pakistan should follow the same path, that the state should control the mosques and the religious institutions, the madaris, that is the madrasas, the schools that license Islamic ulama, that train them and impart knowledge of the religion. And he wants to totally nationalize everything in that sense. And he wants to destroy the freedom, the religious freedom, and the independence of the ulama and of all the religious, religious element, we should say. And I consider this very dangerous. This is something that would be called a state version of Islam that he wants to implement. And that state version of Islam will not be Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. That will be his modernist materialist, which is based on ilhad, which is from Islam, such as rejecting the Sunnah, rejecting the Ahadith, rejecting many of the rulings and practices and beliefs that we derive from the Sunnah. For example, Ghamidi, he rejects the belief in the Adhab al-Qabr. He rejects the belief in the second coming of the Messiah. He rejects the belief in the coming of an individual known as the Dajjal, the Antichrist. He has contempt beliefs and he wants to remove them from Islam, according to his argument, because these are beliefs that do not have any basis in the text of the Quran. And he says the Sunnah is not a source for actual beliefs and practices in addition to what is in the Quran. As I mentioned in the previous video, this very dangerous and false principle, which he invokes in order to totally strip Islam of so many of its beliefs, so many of its practices, so many of its rulings, in order to present Islam in a so that it would be acceptable to those that are westernized, those that are liberal, those that are secular, those that do not like religion, who's those people who in their very DNA have something against some allergy toward religion and toward spirituality, such that Islam will no longer be a religion. It will just be, it'll just be a bunch of emotions. It will not really have the dynamism, the energy, the spirituality, the power. He wants to take that away. And this is why I say that he is an agent of Iblis, of Shaitan, because that's the agenda of the devil himself. And the devil uses these type of individuals like Ghamidi and another person named Muhammad Sheikh and others who have Maududi and Amin Asin Islahi, as I mentioned before. These are from the Indian subcontinent. And outside of the Indian subcontinent, you had an individual named Mahmoud Taha from Sudan. His deviation was similar to Ghamidi. His principle was Mahmoud Taha from Sudan, who was executed in 1985. He invented this principle that the verses in the Quran and the chapters in the Quran that were revealed in Medina are not applicable to today. That they are not universal. They were only restricted to the time of the Most Holy Prophet Muhammad and his companions in Medina or in Arabia. But the Meccan verses of the Quran, which have very few rulings, which are most have moral teachings and is an apocalyptic message regarding the resurrection, that he said this is the universal message, and this is the only part of the Quran that is valid and applicable for today. There's a huge deviation. It's rejecting maybe 2/3 of the Quran or even more, saying that you can still recite it and read it and consider the Quran, but the rules and teachings contained in that part of the Quran, according to Mahmoud Taha, are now abrogated and have no application in today's world. And Ghamidi has his principle where he says that the Sunnah is not really applicable in today's world in terms of its teachings and beliefs, but Sunnah is only there to confirm what is already in the Quran. It's a major deviation, And so Ghamidi Sahib, he wants to control the madaris in the mosque, or he wants to give the control to the government. If the government controls the mosques and the religious schools and keeps the ulama on a tight leash, that the dynamism of Islam will be destroyed. That there will be no room for independent thought or any sort of dissent in the religious sense. And this is totally contrary to the spirit of our religion and the history of our religion. Think about all the prophets and reformers and saints. Many of them had a dissident narrative, because prophets are raised up in an atmosphere where they have to dissent from the establishment, from the religious establishment, from the general practices and beliefs of the people. They have to dissent from that in order to rectify and purify that. And this is why they face so much opposition, insurmountable opposition. But only with the help of the divine assistance of Allah Azza wa Jal, they're able to succeed and overcome that, as in the most prominent being in the case of the most holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Furthermore, Ghamidi, he wants to standardize Islam. Again, I'm not saying that the diversity in the thought and practice in Islam is ideal. But when you standardize Islam, you say that only this version of Islam, all of this is right or wrong, if that version of Islam is itself wrong, then this is very bad. We would rather have the freedom, we would rather have an open spiritual marketplace in which the truth is also available, rather than have a standardized version of religion, but that version of religion is a false version of religion. And so the the path to finding the straight path becomes difficult, and becomes sort of has to go underground in society. That's what he wants to do. He wants to force the true Islam, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, underground in society, and that the state would impose its version of Islam, which would be a false version of Islam. This is why I have actually previously stated and taught that we have to be wary of the so-called Islamists who say that our objective is to create an Islamic state. Now, in theory, that's what we want. We want to have an Islamic state. We want to have an Islamic society. But in practice, the political groups that are in a position to actually create a state, that their version of Islamic state, it would be a modern version of Islam. It would be a materialist, modernist version of Islam that would drive the true Islam, that is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, underground, and maybe even persecute us. Which is why it would be preferable for us to therefore live in a secular society where there is total freedom of religion, than to live in a so-called Islamic state, but where a false version of Islam is being imposed upon the people. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.